The morning of the ceremony arrived with what the Zephyrians called the tri-moon alignment, when all three of their homeworld satellites appeared in perfect formation in the crystal-clear sky visible through the ship's transparent dome. Lisa woke feeling more refreshed and mentally clear than she had in years, the result of 5 days of purification rituals and meditation. Valara and Zenith arrived early to help her prepare for what they assured her would be the most important day of her life. They brought with them ceremonial robes made of fabric that seemed to shimmer and flow like liquid starlight, along with various ornaments and symbols that they explained were traditional elements of the Unity ceremony. "Today you will be transformed," Valara said as she helped Lisa into the ceremonial garments. "When the ritual is complete, you will no longer be the same person who entered our ship 5 days ago. You will be something new and wonderful, joined forever with your chosen partner." Lisa assumed this was a poetic way of describing how the diplomatic alliance would change her role as humanity's representative to the Zephyrians. She felt honored to be part of such a momentous occasion and confident that the formal treaty they would sign today would mark the beginning of a new era for both species. The translation device on her wrist had been unusually quiet during the preparation period, providing only basic conversational translation without the detailed cultural context notes it had offered during her first meetings with Kefir. Lisa attributed this to the ceremonial nature of the language being used, which probably contained many archaic terms and formal phrases that were difficult to translate precisely. As the attendants finished preparing her appearance, Lisa noticed that the device's display was flickering slightly and showing occasional error messages that disappeared too quickly for her to read. She made a mental note to have Dr. Cooper check it after the ceremony, but she was not particularly concerned since the basic translation functions seemed to be working normally. Kefir appeared at the entrance to her quarters dressed in the most elaborate robe she had seen him wear. The fabric seemed to contain actual points of light that moved in slow patterns across the surface, and his usual blue skin had taken on an almost luminous quality that made him appear both beautiful and otherworldly. "You look radiant," he said, and the translation device rendered his words with notes indicating deep affection and admiration. "The preparation rituals have brought out your inner light in ways that enhance your natural beauty." Lisa felt pleased by the compliment, though she interpreted it as a formal acknowledgement that she had successfully completed the diplomatic preparation requirements. "Thank you, Ambassador. I feel ready to fulfill my role in today's ceremony." Kefir moved closer to her, and she noticed that his large dark eyes seemed to hold an intensity of emotion that was almost overwhelming. "Lisa, there is something I must tell you before we begin the ritual. Something important about the nature of the bonds we are about to form." The translation device began to hum more loudly than usual, and Lisa could see warning symbols flashing on its small display screen. She tapped it gently, assuming it was having minor technical difficulties, and focused her attention on what Kefir was saying. "The sacred unity ceremony is not merely a political alliance," the ambassador continued, his voice carrying tones that the device was struggling to interpret accurately. "It is a joining of souls, a complete merging of two beings into one eternal partnership. Once the ritual is complete, we will be bonded in ways that transcend the physical realm." Lisa felt a moment of confusion as the translation device provided multiple conflicting interpretations of his words. The primary translation still indicated that this was ceremonial language describing a formal diplomatic agreement, but secondary meanings suggested something far more personal and intimate. "I want to make sure I understand correctly," she said carefully. "This ceremony will establish a permanent alliance between humanity and the Zephyrian people. Is that right?" Kefir's expression showed surprise and concern. "The ceremony will establish a permanent bond between you and me personally, Lisa. It will make us partners in all things, sharing our thoughts, our emotions, our very essence for the remainder of our lives." The translation device suddenly displayed a cascade of error messages and then went completely silent. Lisa stared at the blank screen in growing alarm as she realized that she had just lost her ability to communicate effectively with Kefir at the most critical moment of the entire diplomatic mission. "Is there a problem?" the ambassador asked, noticing her distress. Lisa tried to explain about the device malfunction, but without the translator, she could only gesture helplessly at her wrist and shake her head. Kefir seemed to understand that there was a technical difficulty, but he appeared to interpret her concern as nervousness about the upcoming ceremony rather than genuine confusion about its nature. "Do not worry," he said in what sounded like a reassuring tone. "Many people experience anxiety before such an important commitment. It is natural to feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of what we are about to share." Without the translation device, Lisa could only catch fragments of meaning from his words based on tone and context. She understood that he was trying to comfort her, but she was becoming increasingly aware that something was seriously wrong with her understanding of the situation. Valara and Zenith entered the room and began speaking rapidly to Kefir in their own language. Lisa watched their expressions and body language, trying to determine what they were discussing. The attendants seemed excited and pleased, while Kefir appeared to be explaining something about the translation device malfunction. "We must proceed with the ceremony," Valara said in carefully pronounced English that Lisa could understand without technological assistance. "The tri-moon alignment will not occur again for many cycles, and all preparations are complete." Lisa felt trapped in a nightmare scenario where she could not communicate effectively with anyone around her. She tried to indicate that she needed to return to the human ship to repair her translation device, but her gestures were misinterpreted as ceremonial nervousness. Kefir took her hands in his, and she felt a strange tingling sensation where their skin touched. His large dark eyes looked into hers with an expression of such tender affection that she finally began to understand that whatever was about to happen was far more personal than any diplomatic ceremony she had ever imagined. "Lisa," he said softly, and even without translation she could hear the love in his voice. "I know this is frightening, but please trust me. What we are about to share will be beautiful beyond description." The reality of her situation began to crash down on her like a collapsing building. The purification rituals, the ceremonial robes, the talk of permanent bonds and shared essence, none of it had been about diplomacy at all. Somehow, through some terrible misunderstanding, she had agreed to participate in what appeared to be an alien marriage ceremony. She tried to pull away from Kefir, but he held her hands gently and spoke to her in soothing tones as she could not understand. The attendants moved to either side of her, their expressions showing concern for what they clearly believed was pre-ceremony, anxiety rather than genuine distress about the situation. "Please," Lisa said desperately, hoping that someone could understand her English. "I think there has been a mistake. I need to contact my ship." But Kefir and the attendants seemed to interpret her words as part of some human ritual or prayer, and they began to guide her toward the door that led to the ceremonial chamber. Lisa realized with growing horror that the ceremony was about to begin, and she had no way to explain the catastrophic misunderstanding that had led to this moment. The translation device remained completely silent, leaving her alone with her thoughts, as she was led toward what might be the most life-changing mistake in the history of human-alien relations. The interior of the Zephyrian ship was unlike anything Lisa had ever experienced. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed gently with soft light, and the floors felt warm beneath her feet despite appearing to be made of the same material. Every surface curved gracefully into the next, creating spaces that felt organic and flowing rather than constructed. Kefir personally escorted her to the quarters that had been prepared for her stay. The room was spacious and comfortable, with what appeared to be a sleeping area, a workspace, and a small alcove that contained a pool of gently bubbling water that gave off a pleasant floral scent. "This is where you will rest and prepare during your time with us," the ambassador explained. "The pool contains minerals and herbs that will help cleanse your body and spirit in preparation for the ceremony. Your attendants will guide you through the proper rituals each day. Lisa examined the pool with interest, noting how the water seemed to glow with its own inner light. The translation device indicated that these purification baths were a standard part of important diplomatic preparations. In Zephyrian culture, similar to how human diplomats might undergo briefings and protocol training before major negotiations. "How often should I use the pool?" she asked, setting her belongings down on a crystal shelf that seemed to grow from the wall itself. "3 times each day," Kepha replied. "Once upon waking, once at midday, and once before sleep. Each session should last approximately 1 hour, during which you should focus your thoughts on the importance of the ceremony and your commitment to the bonds you will be forming." Lisa nodded, thinking this sounded like a form of meditation combined with physical cleansing. Many human cultures had similar practices for preparing the mind and body for important occasions. 2 Zephyrian attendants appeared at the entrance to her quarters. They were smaller than Kepha, with the same pale blue skin but more delicate features and robes that shifted between shades of silver and white. The translation device identified them as ceremonial assistants, whose role was to guide her through the preparation process. "These are Velara and Zenith," Kepha introduced them. "They have served as attendants for many important ceremonies and will ensure that you are properly prepared in all aspects of the ritual requirements." Velara stepped forward and bowed gracefully. "It is our honor to assist you in this sacred time, Dr. Martinez. We will teach you the proper meditation techniques, help you understand the significance of each ritual element, and ensure that your body and spirit are perfectly prepared for unity." The translation device processed this as standard ceremonial assistance, and Lisa felt grateful for the guidance. She had participated in various cultural ceremonies during her anthropological studies, but never anything quite this elaborate or important. "I appreciate your help," Lisa replied. "I want to make sure I perform my role correctly and show proper respect for your traditions." Zenith smiled, an expression that seemed remarkably human despite her alien features. "Your willingness to embrace our ways shows great wisdom and honor. The preparation process will seem strange at first, but each element has deep significance in creating the proper spiritual condition for the ceremony." Over the next few hours, the attendants explained the schedule Lisa would follow during her 5 days of preparation. Each morning would begin with meditation in the sacred pool, followed by instruction in Zephyrian ceremonial protocols. The afternoons would involve physical preparation, including special dietary requirements and exercises designed to purify the body. The evenings would be spent in deeper meditation and spiritual reflection. "The most important thing is to release any attachments to your previous life," Velara explained as she showed Lisa how to properly enter the purification pool. "During the ceremony, you must be completely present and committed to the new bonds you will be forming. Any lingering connections to past relationships or obligations could interfere with the sacred unity." Lisa found this advice slightly puzzling, but assumed it was a cultural way of emphasizing the importance of focusing completely on the diplomatic alliance being formed. Many human negotiations required similar levels of concentration and commitment. The purification pool felt wonderful. Against her skin, warm and soothing with a slight tingling sensation that seemed to energize her entire body. As she soaked in the mineral-rich water, she found her mind becoming clearer and more focused than it had been in months. The waters contain elements that enhance mental clarity and emotional openness, Zenith explained from beside the pool. "They will help prepare you to form the deep connections that the ceremony requires." Lisa closed her eyes and let herself relax completely for the first time since arriving in Zephyrian space. The stress and responsibility of the diplomatic mission seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of calm anticipation for the important work ahead. Meanwhile, back aboard the human ship, Dr. Cooper was running increasingly detailed diagnostics on the translation device as he monitored its performance from a distance. The quantum matrix was functioning well overall, but he was noticing subtle patterns in its interpretation algorithms that concerned him. The device seemed to be consistently translating certain Zephyrian concepts related to personal relationships and intimate bonding as if they were diplomatic and political terms. When Keffer spoke about unity and commitment, the AI was interpreting these words through the lens of human alliance building and treaty formation rather than trying to understand their true meaning in Zephyrian culture. Cooper made notes about these discrepancies but decided not to interrupt Lisa's preparations unless the problems became more serious. The core communication was still functioning, and he did not want to cause unnecessary concern about minor translation nuances during such a crucial diplomatic mission. Captain Morrison was busy preparing reports for Earth about the unprecedented success of the first contact mission. The prospect of a formal alliance with an advanced alien civilization had generated enormous excitement among the leaders back home, and everyone was eager for details about the upcoming ceremony. On the Zephyrian ship, Lisa was adapting well to her new routine. The meditation sessions in the purification pool left her feeling more centered and peaceful than she had ever experienced. The dietary changes were challenging at first, as the attendants provided her with only certain types of foods that were considered spiritually pure, but she found the simple meals surprisingly satisfying. The most interesting part of the preparation was learning about Zephyrian philosophy and spirituality. Velara and Zenith spent hours each day explaining the deeper meanings behind the ceremony and the importance of the bonds that will be formed. Among our people, the decision to enter into sacred unity is the most important choice an individual can make, Velara explained during one of their afternoon sessions. It represents the willingness to become something greater than yourself by joining completely with another being. The ceremony itself is beautiful beyond description, Zenith added. Two separate spirits become one, sharing everything from that moment forward. There are no secrets, no barriers, no separation between the bonded individuals. Lisa found these descriptions moving and profound, though she interpreted them as poetic ways of describing political alliance and cooperation. The idea of two civilizations becoming so closely connected that they function as partners in all things seemed like the ideal outcome for human-Zephyrian relations. Will I be able to communicate directly with Ambassador Keffer during the ceremony? She asked, wanting to ensure that any formal agreements were clearly understood by both parties. The attendants exchanged a look that the translation device interpreted as amusement and affection. Oh yes, Velara replied. By the end of the ceremony, you and Keffer will be able to communicate more deeply and intimately than you have ever imagined possible. As the days passed, Lisa found herself looking forward to the ceremony with growing excitement and anticipation. She felt honored to be the first human chosen for such an important role in establishing interspecies cooperation, and she was confident that the alliance formed through this ritual would benefit both civilizations for generations to come. The second day of discussions began with Keffer presenting Lisa with what the translation device described as a formal proposal for expanded cooperation between their species. The document was inscribed on a sheet of the same crystal material as his ship, and the symbols seemed to glow and shift as she looked at them. This represents a significant step forward in our relationship, Keffer explained as Lisa held the crystal sheet carefully in her hands. My people have discussed your visit extensively, and we believe that the time has come to deepen our connection through more meaningful exchanges. Lisa felt her heart race with excitement as the translation device processed the formal language of the proposal. This was exactly what Earth had hoped for when they sent the diplomatic mission. A real alliance with an advanced alien civilization could change the future of humanity in ways that were almost impossible to imagine. What kind of exchanges are you proposing? She asked, trying to keep her voice professional despite her growing enthusiasm. Keffer moved closer to her, and she noticed that his presence seemed to create a subtle warmth in the air around them. We would like to invite you to participate in our most sacred ceremony of unity. It is a ritual that has never been offered to a member of another species, but your unique qualities and the connection we have formed convince us that you are worthy of such an honor. The translation device hummed quietly as it processed this statement, and Lisa saw several possible interpretations appear on its small display screen. The primary translation indicated that this was a high-level diplomatic ceremony similar to a state dinner or formal treaty signing in human culture. I am deeply honored by this invitation, Lisa replied formally. Can you tell me more about what this ceremony involves so that I can prepare appropriately? The Sacred Unity Ceremony is our most important ritual for cementing lasting bonds between individuals or groups, Kethfer explained. It requires careful preparation and complete commitment from all participants, as the bonds formed during the ceremony are considered permanent and unbreakable. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. Permanent diplomatic alliances were not uncommon in human history, and the idea of an unbreakable treaty with the Zephyrians was exactly what Earth had hoped to achieve. What kind of preparation would be required on my part? You would need to undergo purification rituals to cleanse yourself of any lingering connections to your previous life, the ambassador said. This ensures that you can enter the ceremony with a pure heart and clear intentions. The process takes several days and involves meditation, fasting, and spiritual cleansing in our sacred pools. The translation device indicated that these were standard diplomatic preparations in Zephyrian culture, similar to how human ambassadors might prepare for important state occasions through briefings and protocol training. Lisa felt confident that she could handle whatever ceremonial requirements were involved. I would be honored to participate in such an important ceremony, she said. When would this take place? Kethfer's robe shifted to colors that the translation device labeled as joy and satisfaction. We could begin the preparations immediately if you are willing. The ceremony itself would take place in 5 days during the optimal alignment of our homeworld's 3 moons. The timing is considered very auspicious for forming new bonds. Lisa felt a thrill of excitement run through her. 5 days was not much time to prepare for such a momentous occasion, but the opportunity was too important to delay. This could be the breakthrough that established humanity as a respected member of the galactic community. I accept your invitation, she said. Formally, I am ready to begin whatever preparations are necessary. Captain Morrison entered the conference room at that moment, carrying a communication pad with an urgent message from Earth. He looked pleased but slightly overwhelmed as he approached Lisa and the ambassador. Dr. Martinez, I have just received word from command that they are thrilled with your progress, he announced. They are authorizing you to proceed with whatever agreements you think are in humanity's best interests. You have full diplomatic authority to represent Earth in these negotiations. Lisa felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders, but also a surge of confidence in her abilities. The past 2 days had gone so smoothly that she was certain she could handle whatever challenges lay ahead. Ambassador Kethfer has invited me to participate in their most sacred diplomatic ceremony, she explained to the captain. It will formalize our alliance and establish permanent bonds between our species. Morrison's eyebrows rose with surprise and excitement. That sounds like exactly what we hope to achieve. How long would this ceremony take? The preparations require 5 days, and then the ceremony itself would take place during a special astronomical alignment, Lisa replied. I have already accepted the invitation on behalf of humanity. The captain nodded approvingly. Outstanding work, Dr. Martinez. I will inform Earth immediately that we are on the verge of a historic breakthrough in human-alien relations. After Morrison left to send his report, Lisa and Kethfer spent the rest of the day discussing the details of the upcoming ceremony. The ambassador explained that she would be moved to the Zephyrian ship for the preparation period as their sacred pools and meditation chambers could not be replicated aboard a human vessel. You will be treated with the utmost respect and care during your stay with us, Kethfer assured her. Our most skilled attendants will guide you through each step of the purification process. By the time the ceremony begins, you will be perfectly prepared to fulfill your role. Lisa found herself curious about what exactly her role would involve, but Kethfer seemed to prefer to explain things gradually rather than overwhelming her with too much information at once. She assumed this was a cultural preference for building, understanding slowly and carefully. That evening, Dr. Cooper ran extensive diagnostics on the translation device to ensure it would continue functioning perfectly during the extended stay aboard the alien ship. He found some minor fluctuations in the quantum matrix, but nothing that seemed cause for concern. The device has been adapting to Zephyrian language patterns even better than I expected, he explained to Lisa as they reviewed the technical readouts. However, I am noticing some interesting variations in how it handles certain types of emotional and cultural contexts. The AI seems to be learning to interpret Zephyrian concepts by comparing them to similar human concepts, which is working well, but occasionally produces slight variations in meaning. Are these variations significant enough to cause problems? Lisa asked, though she was not particularly worried since the conversations had been going so smoothly. Ryan shook his head. Not at all. The core meanings are being translated accurately. It is just that some of the emotional undertones and cultural references are being filtered through human cultural assumptions. For instance, when the ambassador talks about bonds and unity, the device is interpreting those concepts in terms of human diplomatic and social relationships rather than trying to understand them purely from a Zephyrian perspective. Lisa considered this information, but decided it was not concerning. Human and Zephyrian concepts of cooperation and alliance were probably similar, enough that any minor variations in interpretation would not affect the substance of their agreements. As long as we are understanding each other on the important points, I think we will be fine, she concluded. The ceremony is too important an opportunity to worry about minor translation nuances. Cooper nodded and continued his preparations to ensure the device would function properly during her stay on the Zephyrian ship. Neither of them realized that the quantum matrix was beginning to systematically misinterpret some of the most crucial cultural concepts they would encounter, translating intimate personal relationships as political alliances and romantic intentions as diplomatic gestures. The next morning, Lisa packed her belongings and prepared to transfer to the Zephyrian vessel for the 5 days of preparation that would lead to the most important ceremony of her career. The conference room had been transformed into something that looked more like a garden than a meeting space. Keffer had requested that they conduct their discussions in an environment that felt natural and peaceful, so the crew had brought in plants from the ship's hydroponics bay and adjusted the lighting to create a warm, welcoming atmosphere. Lisa sat across from the Zephyrian ambassador at a low table made of polished wood from Earth. Between them lay the gifts she had brought, along with several items that Keffer had produced from his robes. His offerings included small crystals that hung with their own inner light and what appeared to be some kind of flowering plant that changed colors as it responded to their voices. Your species places great value on the sharing of meaningful objects, Keffer observed, his long fingers tracing the edge of one of the music recordings Lisa had given him. The translation device rendered his words with notes indicating pleasure and approval. This speaks well of your understanding of proper relationship building, Lisa nodded enthusiastically. Gift exchange has been an important part of human diplomacy for thousands of years. We believe that sharing something precious from our own culture shows respect and trust. Trust, Keffer repeated, and the way he said the word made Lisa's translation device hum with additional meanings. Yes, trust is the foundation upon which all lasting bonds are built. Without trust, there can be no true unity between beings. Over the next several hours, they discussed many topics ranging from their respective technologies to their forms of government. Lisa was impressed by how smoothly the conversations flowed, with the translation device seamlessly converting complex concepts between their two very different languages and ways of thinking. The Zephyrians, it turned out, lived in collective communities where individual desires were balanced against the needs of the group. They had no concept of money or ownership in the way humans understood it, but instead operated on a system of mutual obligation and shared responsibility that seemed to work remarkably well for their peaceful society. We have always been curious about species that develop differently than ourselves, Keffer explained. Your humans show such fascinating independence of thought and action. Each individual seems to burn with their own inner fire, yet you can still work together when circumstances require it. That independence has been both our greatest strength and our biggest weakness, Lisa admitted. It drives us to explore and create and dream of new possibilities, but it also leads to conflicts and misunderstandings between different groups of people. Kepfer leaned forward with obvious interest. And how do your people resolve such conflicts? How do you bridge the gaps between individual desires and collective needs? Lisa found herself explaining human concepts of compromise, negotiation, and sometimes even love and marriage as ways that people learn to put others before themselves. The translation device handled these explanations smoothly, though she noticed it sometimes paused for several seconds before providing Kepfer's responses, as if the concepts required extra processing time. Fascinating, the ambassador said after she had finished describing how human couples often learn to think of themselves as part of a team rather than just as individuals. This joining of separate beings into a unified partnership, it creates something stronger than either could be alone. When it works well, yes, Lisa replied. Two people who truly understand and support each other can accomplish amazing things together. They become more than the sum of their parts. Something in Kepfer's large dark eyes seemed to brighten at this explanation. The translation device indicated that he was experiencing what humans might call joy or excitement, though it also flagged several possible alternative interpretations of his emotional state. I believe your people and mine have much more in common than we first realized, he said. This concept of unity through understanding, of becoming something greater through conscious choice to bind oneself to another, it resonates deeply with Zephyrian philosophy. As the day progressed, Kepfer began to speak more personally about his own experiences and beliefs. He described growing up in a Zephyrian community where every individual was valued for their unique contributions, but where the greatest honor came from forming deep connections with others that lasted throughout their very long lives. Among my people, we believe that every being is incomplete until they find their true complement, he explained. Someone whose thoughts and dreams and spirit fit perfectly with their own, like two pieces of a puzzle that were always meant to be joined together. Lisa found this concept beautiful and said so. It sounds similar to human ideas about soulmates or perfect partners, though I think most of us are more practical about relationships than that. We tend to believe that love is something you build together through shared experiences rather than something you simply discover. Build together. Yes, Kepfer agreed, and his robe shifted to a warm golden color that the translation device indicated meant deep satisfaction. The process of building such a bond, of learning to know another being so completely that you can anticipate their needs and desires, it is perhaps the most sacred thing in existence. The ambassador went on to describe Zephyrian bonding ceremonies, which the translation device explained as elaborate rituals where two individuals formally committed to sharing their lives completely. Lisa listened with fascination, interpreting these descriptions as beautiful cultural traditions that might be similar to human marriage ceremonies, but with far more spiritual significance. The bonding process requires great care and preparation, Kepfer continued. Both participants must be absolutely certain of their choice, for once the bond is formed, it cannot be undone. They become two halves of a single whole, sharing not just their lives but their very essence. That sounds incredibly meaningful, Lisa said. I can see why such ceremonies would be central to your culture. Captain Morrison appeared in the doorway and gestured to Lisa, indicating that it was time for the scheduled break in their discussions. She excused herself politely and stepped into the corridor where the captain and Dr. Cooper were waiting with expressions of barely contained excitement. This is going better than we could have hoped, Morrison said quietly. The ambassador seems genuinely interested in building a relationship with humanity. Earth is going to be thrilled with these initial reports. Ryan nodded enthusiastically. The translation device is performing perfectly. I was monitoring the data feeds, and the accuracy rates are actually higher than our projected 97%. The quantum matrix seems to be learning and adapting to Zephyrian communication. Patterns even faster than I expected. Lisa felt a warm glow of satisfaction at their success. Kefir is remarkable. He has such depth of feeling and such genuine curiosity about human nature. I think we may be looking at the beginning of a truly historic alliance between our species. When she returned to the conference room, she found that Kefir had arranged his gifts in a new pattern on the table. The crystals were now positioned in a circle around the flowering plant, which had turned a deep shade of blue that seemed to pulse gently in rhythm with some internal pattern. "I hope you do not mind," he said as she sat down. "I have taken the liberty of arranging these items in a traditional pattern that represents the early stages of a potential partnership. It seemed appropriate given the positive direction of our discussions." Lisa smiled and nodded, assuming this was simply another diplomatic gesture. "Of course. I am honored that you would include our gifts in such a meaningful arrangement." Kefir's expression grew even more pleased, and his robe shifted to colors that the translation device indicated meant hope and anticipation. "I am beginning to believe that you and I may be destined for something truly special, Dr. Martinez." The connections between us seem to grow stronger with each moment we spend in conversation. D.A. Lisa Martinez checked her equipment one more time as the massive alien ship came into view through the observation deck windows. The Zephyrian vessel looked like a crystal mountain floating in space, its surface catching and reflecting the light from nearby stars in ways that made her eyes water. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, learning everything humanity knew about the Zephyrians, which honestly was not very much at all. The translation device hummed softly. On her wrist, a sleek silver band that contained more computing power than entire cities had possessed just 50 years ago. The Orion Cooper had worked day and night to perfect the quantum translation matrix, and Lisa trusted his work completely. The device could supposedly translate not just words but cultural meanings, emotional undertones, and even body language. Cues that might be important for communication. Captain Jake Morrison walked up behind her, his boots making soft sounds on the metal deck. "How are you feeling about all this, Doc?" he asked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Lisa could see the worry in his eyes, even though he tried to hide it with a confident smile. "Nervous but excited," she replied honestly. "This is what I have trained my whole life for, Jake. First contact with an intelligent alien species. The chance to bridge two completely different worlds through language and understanding." The captain nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Remember that you are not just representing yourself out there, Lisa. You are speaking for all of humanity. Every word you say, every gesture you make, it all matters more than we can possibly imagine." Lisa felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Earth had been monitoring Zephyrian communications for 2 years now, ever since their ships had first appeared at the edge of human space. The aliens had made no hostile moves, but they had also shown no interest in making contact until 3 weeks ago, when they had sent a formal invitation for diplomatic talks. The invitation itself had been a masterpiece of careful wording, transmitted in perfect English that suggested the Zephyrians had been studying human languages for quite some time. They proposed a meeting aboard their vessel to discuss what they called mutual understanding and potential cooperation between star-traveling species. Ryan Cooper appeared at Lisa's other side, carrying a tablet covered in diagnostic readings. His brown hair was messy from running his hands through it, which he always did when he was nervous about his equipment. "The translation matrix is running at optimal levels," he reported. "I have loaded every piece of data we have about Zephyrian language patterns, cultural references, and communication styles. The AI should be able to handle real-time translation with 97% accuracy." "What about the other 3%? Lisa asked, raising one eyebrow. Ryan shrugged. "Language is art as much as science, especially when dealing with alien minds. There will always be some room for interpretation and context that even the best technology cannot fully capture. But the device will flag any uncertain translations and give you multiple possible meanings when it encounters ambiguous phrases. The intercom crackled to life with the voice of Lieutenant Amy Watson from the bridge. "Dr. Martinez, please report." "To Docking Bay 2. The Zephyrin shuttle is approaching and will arrive in 10 minutes. Lisa took a deep breath and gathered her equipment. Along with the translation device, she carried a small bag containing gifts from Earth, including music recordings, art reproductions, and samples of human literature that had been carefully chosen to represent the best of human culture without revealing too much about military capabilities or technological weaknesses. The docking bay was larger than most rooms on the ship, but it still felt cramped when filled with the dozen crew members who would be present for the historic first meeting. Everyone had been briefed on proper behavior during first contact, which mostly meant staying quiet and letting Lisa do all the talking unless directly addressed. The Zephyrin shuttle looked nothing like human spacecraft. It seemed to be made of the same crystal material as their main ship, and it moved through space without any visible engines or thrusters. The craft simply glided into the docking bay as if pulled by invisible strings, settling onto the deck with barely a whisper of sound. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Lisa began to wonder if perhaps the Zephyrins were waiting for some kind of signal or permission to disembark. Then a section of the crystal hull simply dissolved away, revealing an opening large enough for several people to walk through side by side. The first Zephyrin to emerge was clearly the ambassador they had been expecting. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the artificial light of the docking bay. His features were humanoid but elegant in a way that reminded Lisa of classical sculptures, with high cheekbones and large dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. He wore flowing robes that changed color as he moved, shifting from deep purple to silver to gold in patterns that seemed to follow his emotions or thoughts. When he stepped onto the deck of the human ship, he paused and looked directly at Lisa with an expression that seemed both curious and pleased. The translation device on her wrist vibrated gently and then spoke in a calm, neutral voice. "Greetings, small star traveler. I am called Kethver, and I speak for the Zephyrin Collective in matters of contact with new species. Your people intrigue us greatly." Lisa stepped forward and offered what she hoped was a respectful bow. "Welcome aboard the Horizon's Edge, Ambassador Kethver. I am Dr. Lisa Martinez, and I represent humanity in these first diplomatic discussions between our peoples. We are honored by your invitation to meet." Kethver tilted his head slightly, and the translation device indicated that this gesture showed approval and interest. "Your language patterns are fascinating, Dr. Martinez. So direct and yet filled with emotional undertones that speak of both confidence and humility. We have much to learn from each other." "We certainly hope so," Lisa replied. "Humanity has long dreamed of finding other intelligent life among the stars. The opportunity to exchange knowledge and culture with the Zephyrian people represents one of the greatest moments in our history." The ambassador moved closer, and Lisa noticed that he seemed to glide rather than walk, his feet barely touching the deck. "Knowledge and culture, yes, but also perhaps something deeper. We sense great potential in your species, Dr. Martinez, a capacity for bonds that transcend the boundaries between worlds." The translation device flagged this statement as having multiple possible meanings, but Lisa assumed he was speaking metaphorically about diplomatic relationships and trade agreements. She smiled warmly and gestured toward the corridor that led to the conference room that had been prepared for their discussions. "Shall we begin our talks, Ambassador? We have prepared a comfortable space where we can discuss the future relationship between our peoples." Kethver's large dark eyes seemed to sparkle with something that the translation device labeled as pleasure and anticipation. "Indeed, Dr. Martinez, I believe we shall accomplish great things together. The bonds we forge here may change both our species forever." As they walked toward the conference room, Lisa felt a surge of excitement and pride. The first contact was going perfectly, and the translation device was working flawlessly. She had no idea that the quantum matrix was already beginning to misinterpret. Crucial cultural context, setting the stage for misunderstandings that would change her life in ways she could never have imagined.